What is a person without the form that shapes him? The form that surrounds him inexorably like a coat of armour, and which nonetheless is the very thing that bestows suppleness on him, and which makes him free of all uncertainty and all paralysing fears, free for himself and his highest possibilities. What is a person without this? What is a person without a life form? That is to say, without a form which he has chosen for his life, a form into which and through which to pour out his life, so that his life becomes the soul of the form, and the form becomes the expression of his soul. So those are the words that I think are some of the most important lines of theology of the 20th century. So you're probably thinking, well, who wrote them then? So you can see here, they were written by Urs Von Balthasar, and it's part of his series, The Glory of the Lord, and it's from the first book, Seeing the Form. So why do I think that these are so important, these lines here? And it's because of that word that came up a lot in that reading there, the word form. And in the original German that Balthasar wrote in, that word is gestalt, which is not just the German word for the English word form. It actually has a whole philosophical tradition that is tied to it, that Balthasar is pulling on when he's using that word there. So to understand this a bit deeper, we need to think about these three elements that are often called the transcendentals: the good, the true, and the beautiful. And these have been used in many ways in the study of theology. They come into the study of theology quite a lot. And I'll make another video on the transcendentals another time. But often what happens is people start with the good and they move through the true into the beautiful. Or they might start with the true and move through the good into the beautiful. But it's very rare that people start with beauty. But this is exactly what Balthasar does. And the ramifications of this are huge, because what Balthasar is ultimately saying is that the theological practice or the discipline of theology is actually inherently an aesthetic one, just as much as it is about beliefs or doctrines. And this form, or this approach to seeing God in this way, is inherently imaginative. And what I mean by that is it's seeing the imaginative in the critical sense of the term, which is the faculty of the human mind which is capable of perceiving patterns or wholes. And so the gestalt is something that refuses to be reduced to the sum of its parts, but must be perceived initially as a whole in order to be understood. So you can see, hopefully, if you've watched a few of my videos up until now, why I'm so interested in Balthasar, because he sees the study of theology as a way of perceiving or seeing the world, not just as learning a load of information. And actually, that more systematic theological approach that breaks down theology into these different sections can result in overemphasizing certain aspects above others, rather than when they are seen within a whole way of living and seeing the world, then that gestalt, that form, is inherently going to make sure that they are held together in tension rather than broken apart so that one might be emphasized over the other. And I would argue that often where Christianity goes wrong, both in theological studies and in ecclesial church practice, is when one of those things that is meant to be part of a whole is elevated to become the whole, when one of the parts becomes the main thing. And it's so easy for that subtly to happen. And so, as you might expect for Balthasar being a Christian theologian, the form, the gestalt that he sees as the ultimate revealing of the glory of the triune God is in the incarnation of Jesus Christ. That in the incarnation, Jesus offers a life form to humanity that, as that quote that I read at the beginning says, is something into which humanity can pour our own life in order to understand and have God revealed to us. But it's very interesting because when we see faith in this way, as I've kind of mentioned, it becomes, rather than seeing, to understand God, you have to understand or attain through knowledge a load of information or doctrines. It becomes what most Christians would say based on what they've actually experienced in their walk with the Lord, which is you suddenly meet a person, Jesus, the God man, who then reveals something which totally changes the way that you see yourself and the world around you. And Balthasar makes a key turn in his understanding of gestalt a few pages later when he says this: the Christian will realize his mission only if he truly becomes this form, this gestalt, which has been willed and instituted by Christ. The exterior of this form must express and reflect its interior to the world in a credible manner. And the interior must be confirmed, justified, and made love-worthy in its radiant beauty through the truth of the exterior that manifests it. When it is achieved, Christian form is the most beautiful thing that may be found in the human realm. And so what Balthasar has been talking about up until this point is how, for example, a work of art, he says, can die as a result of being looked at by too many dull eyes. So although the form itself is given and instituted by Christ, as he says in that quote, our job as humans is to be able to perceive the form with awe, to perceive with wonder the form that has been displayed for us in Jesus Christ. But Jesus's plan for humans is not just to perceive this form, but actually to become this form. And so this is why, for example, in the gospel, Jesus is constantly saying, I don't do anything apart from my Father. He's always emphasizing that unity that he has with the Father, because he's offering a way of living, a gestalt for human beings, not just to understand God through, but to step into in order to become a mirror themselves of God. And so just as works of art, if they are taking their inspiration from the ultimate form of the glory of God that is radiating into the world, these works of art can become conduits of that glory and spread it to the world. Balthasar says that the highest form, the most saturated version of a work of art, is when a human being says yes to becoming the form that they have perceived. And so this is why I think that Balthasar's words in the opening pages of his book, Seeing the Form, are the most important words of theology in the 20th century, because he brings together the fact that theology is not just a load of things to know and understand or knowledge to attain, it's a way of seeing the world. But also he takes it a step further by saying that way of seeing the world is not just something that you can look around at the world and either feel better about yourself or worse about others through, but that's a mirror that you turn on yourself so that you can become the form that you have perceived. And so he is inherently talking about discipleship as well as perception, and bringing those two things together in a really beautiful way. So thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I know that in many ways this is quite a dense topic, and Balthasar is touching on a lot of very important but sometimes difficult to understand themes, especially if you're being first introduced to them. So if there is anything that you would like me to continue talking about or clarify further, then please do leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to do so. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in another video very soon.